try to manage. So.
Okay, nice.
It's a exceptional time, so exceptional picture.
Yes, exactly. So we are starting this session today with Juha Kaario. We are going to share about the specific of a sustainable and impact business model. This session is happening on March 20th, 2020, with the Sustainability and Impact Club. So I stop sharing my screen, and then you can share yours. Can you share your screen, please?
Yeah.
Okay. And I turn off my.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're 28 people in the call, so we'll see. Okay. Yeah, I turn off my video.
Okay. Let's see how this goes. Okay. Okay, I should be now sharing the.
Yeah, I can see. So it works.
Yeah.
All good. You can go.
Okay, so welcome everybody to this virtual meeting. I've been hanging around whole week in online meetings because of the situation and working from home. So it's quite exceptional time. So introduction, my name is Juha Kaario. I work as an entrepreneur for software business, and then I'm also working as a business coach or godfather for companies in the association called Pirkanmaan Yrityskummit, so the business godfathers of Pirkanmaa, and that's why I'm also linked with Eva, and she was kind enough to ask me to give a presentation about business models and sustainability. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So as a background for this presentation is that I've been entrepreneur from 2010 when I left Nokia, where I was working for 15 years of that, something like 13 years in the Nokia Research Center. And in the Nokia Research Center in the 2007, 2008 and 2009, I was working in the sustainability project for Nokia. For example, I negotiated with World Heritage Center a deal between Nokia and World Heritage Center list, so these World Heritage Center sites, so we could incorporate into the Nokia map business all the World Heritage sites, and the idea was to create like a conscious consumption or ecological tourist platform, a business platform around that. But unfortunately, Nokia, had a bad times in the phones and such, so this project was cancelled in 2011 or 12. But that's my background in actual sustainability business for large companies, and then otherwise it's a passion of mine. So going to the presentation is that I try to keep a kind of a couple of like 15-minute sessions, and then have a time for questions and interactions. So it's hopefully doesn't get too boring just to listen. Okay, so start with the kind of a little bit far from the business models, but something which is quite important when you're talking about business model and especially you're talking about business models about sustainability. So Douglas Adams, the famous book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, defines the best invisibility engine or invisibility motor, which is somebody else's problem, which means that if there's a pink elephant on a cricket field, nobody sees it because it's a complete, out of the experience of those people. So their brains refuse to see that, so they ignore it and don't see it. So, and this kind of a model is really something that is very, very, very common in the in sustainability and ecological issues, since people tend to kind of or ignore them or don't see them because they are not in their face yet. Luckily, or luckily, I don't know, say luckily, but the awareness of the global warming is rising, so people are actually starting to see it more and more. So there's much more ground for selling things because people are more like understanding that there's something really happening. So it's not like pushing rope into the hole. But if you kind of think about how things are, seen by people or understood by people. So there's basically actually 4 ways how people forget things. So actively forget things or unaware forgetting things. This is also important to understand how of the people's behavior. So if you think about the first thing is that there's a kind of awareness that you don't remember everything. So this is quite a safe zone, that you just acknowledge the fact that you don't know everything. So there are things that you should know, or things you might want to know, but you're aware that you can't know everything. And this is an active stage when people are looking for information. They are really like, okay, I might not know this thing, but I will take a look, and and I Google, and I'll do these kind of things. And then still in the safe side is this actively choosing not memorize certain things. So it's like think that, okay, I know that there's a ecological crisis somewhere, but it's not affecting me, so I don't have to remember this thing right now. But it's still kind of aware that you kind of know that there's something happening. So it's still think that you can kind of easily to be memorize things if they become necessary. Then comes a little bit more dangerous zones is that when you involuntarily forget things what you don't use at the moment. This is, for example, quite common in the language learning. So you want to learn all the words for Spanish or for German or for English or Finnish, but you just can't remember things. And then you forget things, and then you kind of might use different words because you remember those, and that's where you actually forming how you speak foreign language, because what you can learn, and you don't actually know that what you have forgotten. And that's also kind of dangerous in the sustainability, because there are things that you should know but you don't know, and then you forget them, and then later on you don't remember to actually look into them, and it becomes actually a surprise when you learn them again. Then the most dangerous one is the last one, that you're aware that there's things that you should remember, you should know. And this is actually a place where all this kind of hate talk and all the kind of things are born. And people just don't know what they should know, and then they ignore things, and then they have strong opinions about things without knowing that there are actually other way of looking at things. So these are quite important when you think about when you're marketing later on, or sustainability things. You might become obstacles of your path to the success. Okay. Then another thing that is affecting the things when we are talking about sustainability and other things also in marketing is that people's awareness of long-term change, or changes that doesn't happen immediately, is quite hard to detect. For example, here is a weight gain during 10 years. So there's this person was in a Weight Watchers program, and in 1 year lost something like 10 kilos of the weight. And then you see that gradually what happens, it just bumps and down and gains up. So for example, it's typically in the Christmas time you eat more, and then you start watching your weight again and drop it back. And each year it happens a little bit gradually, switching back to the original starting position. And this is something that's very hard to detect. And also, if you think about the very recent activities around this coronavirus, it's very hard to detect, what's actually happening in the society and how things are moving, because it's fast, but it's not like immediately. It just happens in a part of weeks and even months. So it's quite difficult to detect, how this is really affecting what's really happening. So you really have to be very certain what's happening, and that's why there's really kind of if you think about how much there are new infections happening in Finland versus how many experts of infectious diseases are happening in Finland at the moment. So there's much more people that are experts in this situation because they see it very narrow at the moment. Okay, but this is quite important to remember. Then if we start putting these things together in the let's say cultural way, is one of the topics I really like as a research is language and losing languages and losing biodiversity, because they are really more connected together. So in the island societies, in the research, they have been detected that like it takes several hundred years to the culture and the language to adapt to the environment around us. And it appears in a way that, for example, when the Western people moved in Australia, and there's already the Aboriginals living there. For example, Aboriginals know by name and by their history something like 140 edible plants in Australia. The current Western movers, their language and their knowledge only knows about 40 edible vegetable in the Australian landscape. So this is clear example, for example, how things affect. Another example is from Finland, is that that in northern Finland, in Lapland, there's a Sami people that talk about Sami language or talk Sami language. And there was a study in the Helsinki University about the mating and of salmon, so how the salmon lay eggs. And they recognizes that previous knowledge was that the salmon only lays eggs in rivers and streams, but this study noticed that they actually also lay eggs into those small ponds where the river starts, so where the stream starts. So they also lay eggs in there, and that was kind of a groundbreaking research and a published paper in the biological department. And the Sami people actually noted that paper and noticed that, okay, we have called these ponds like salmon mating ponds, throughout the history. So results is that the Finnish researcher was doing zero research because he didn't know about the language of Sami. So these things happen. So it's quite interesting to understand that what we think about, how we act, and what is our culture is really related to the nature and the environment around us, and quite important to know. Then moving to the business. So now there's lots of talk about the business and sorry, people, and not so much business. The picture here is the classic example that if you're aware of business, that if you to be very, very cautious about your opinions and how you push things. So this obviously refers to saying that if you're a hammer, you see everything as a nails. So that's typical narrow view of what happens when you are really into your business and you try to sell things. You don't see actually that in some cases the hammer is not the solution, but you try to push it through. And this is a way how the business model should avoid avoid seeing only one way. Gary Hamel, who is a quite famous business writer and economics knowledge, and I think his writing about strategic resilience is resulting quite much to the language and biodiversity. So if you think about how your company survives in the turbulent times, for example, Corona crisis, it's not that you adapt to that crisis and you're trying to bounce back. So if you are inside the crisis without fundamental strategy to adapt to the change, it's already too late in the situation when the, sorry about my friends, but when shit hits the fan, then you are too late. So it's resilience is about kind of a strategic capability to adapt to the change even before it happens. And I think in sustainability, this is quite important learning to take about. Okay, now I think it's a good time to break before going to the tools. And if there's any questions or comments at this point. How we should do it? Does, you raise your hand or write or something?
Well, we have very different backgrounds around the table, the virtual table. So some are coming from Leadership for Change program, others are coming from engineering program. So I'd like very much this introduction, which is broader than just only business. So guys, do you have a comment maybe about what we just saw or listened?
I would like to add that I'm very positively surprised because I really expected to have something very deep down in business right away. And it was very nice introduction and very nice way of putting things. So thank you. It was great.
Okay. So well, we have a time to discuss further more. Maybe I continue.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I go a little bit, then into the tool side of thinking. So that's why I was kind of quite much talking about how people see things and how people lock into their positions quite easily. It's quite important then when you start looking for the business model. So this is a classic consultancy 4-square model. So consultants always like to put things in the 4 squares because it's quite easy to make kind of a parallels or opposites. So from this, when we start looking at this, there are things that are quite important in urgent and urgent. So there are importance, that high important things and low important things, and then urgency, which is high and low. If there's a high urgency and high importance, that's typical like when Exxon tanker, oil tanker gets hit into the Alaska, then it's an oil spill in the nature, and so important is high, urgency is high. So there has to be kind of immediate actions so if that's a situation where you are at it, you obviously put all your effort to compensate that fact. So it's a place that the companies either have things to do, or either have sustainability strategy in place or not. And if they have not, then it's a little bit too late to do anything. So it's a place that there has lots of need for sustainability actions, but when it's over there, it's quite difficult to be there. So you have to be really agile and really be there already to kind of give anything that a company could buy. And then if you go like high importance and low urgency, then we go into the sub-optimization place. So there's a place that you know that there are things that your company should be doing, like preventing oil spills or things, but they are not kind of urgent, so you can cope with them. So they are annoying, but you probably adding to those or fine-tuning those is not really adding the value in your company. So you are not really achieving anything by kind of optimizing those processes. But it's still probably they have to be done in some point, but typically it's not the thing that you get value. And even worse is if you go into low urgencies and low low urgency and low importance, then it's something that you just tinker around. It's like, okay, let's have a paper recycler in our company, and then we save the world. Well, it's tinkering. It's something that you should do anyway. It's low urgency, it's low importance, but it's easy to understand. It's easy to people to do. So people are tinkering around there. So I think that the best place where a sustainability consultant or sustainability company or this kind of emerging company can create value to customers is attending the things that are urgent, high urgent, but the importance is low at the moment, because they are the things that affect to the high importance when they become kind of high importance. They might be low at the moment, but you can grow them or they grow on time. So you have still time to do them, and you can make a difference. So for example, if importance in low is that there's could be an alternative way of transmitting energy rather than putting them in the tankers, then it's something that you can actually create value, because urgency is high because oil is definitely running out. So if you can create kind of a alternative strategy for an oil company to invest, for example, solar energy, that would be a hidden gem, because then now they have money to invest in it, and in some ways it becomes a high importance. So if you have a customers in a business, try to steer them away from these two lower places and try to focus on things that are like high urgency but low importance to that company at the moment, because then you can probably create the best value as an outsider. Another way of looking at how then implement things in the company is thinking about sustainability pyramid as a strategy, company strategy. So if you think about these recycling and all of these kind of things, they are in this tactical sustainability. So it's something that you have to do in every day. You have to kind of do in the company to keep it up with the goals. And same way, if you think about process sustainability, is that you can fine-tune your company to behave energy efficiently, or reduce the uses of cars and whatever there is. But the learning from here is that if you don't have a strategy that guidelines all these, so that what is the reason that you reduce driving, what is the reason that you reduce the usage of fuel, what is the reason you recycle. If you don't have a company strategy to guide these things, then these are sub-optimization again. So you don't actually achieve the things that you want to achieve. So you have to have a clear strategy in the company to drive these things too. So as a impact company and looking for customers, definitely you have to look for what is the strategic sustainability of that company, where it treats all the things that they do. What is the pinpoint in here in the top that they want to do, where they create most of the value. Luckily, there's good tools also to achieve this when we kind of go for the customers. So the parallel between this like sustainability pyramid and hero marketing, which is purely a marketing strategy rather than sustainability strategy, is it's the same thing. So I don't know if you know about the hero marketing, but the idea is that you define your marketing strategy and your company activities or your entity activities around things that you can kind of select, like 1 to 3 of large scale projects that you run throughout the year, which are really pinpointing the best things that you have in your business or in your offering. And that's where you make the kind of the biggest efforts. And then the hub, which is the like creating the awareness of things, is something that you push regularly. For example, you might have in your marketing program, you have 3 trade shows you go each year where you create the biggest message, you create the product launches, you create the things that you want to launch, and the hub is the supporting there. So after the launch, you have every month a big kind of a video tutorial or something that you regularly push and that you push them into social media channel and blah 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 to create this kind of a constant awareness that what you really want to market. And then hygiene part is the thing that you keep things in the knowledge, you keep things that people can search. If they get interested in your hero, they get reminded by your hub, then there should be things that you search when you want to know about things. And I think the parallel to this is that, when think about the tactical sustainability things at the company, they are the things that you want to be aware that, if I want to recycle, how to do it within the company. If I want to do things in the company, how to do it. So there should be the information immediately available. But then it should be linked in the way that, we recycle because of this, and then there's a reminder every month, recycle your food waste because, recycle paper because, and so on. And then when this awareness is raised, then there should be immediately tools to do it. So this is a kind of a way of creating the strategy, and then first of all, so create a strategy about sustainability for company, and then build the marketing and communication around to support that. And there's a quite important message outside of sustainability, but from strategic building is that typical saying is that in a company, the company culture eats the strategy as a breakfast, which means that when you introduce a new strategy, the biggest thing is to how you get that strategy to a true company, because company is built up of people, and people are having their culture, and they will go on their ways even there's a new strategy if the strategy is not communicated throughout the company all the time, constantly, and a believable way. And building up a strategy is difficult, but implementing the strategy in company is even more difficult. So this is I think learning from these two places. So when you go to a company, to customer, or public customer, and try to create things that create value in this domain, you have to go through very painful process of marketing it and get it done, and identify what are your core values, what you are actually selling, how do you sell it, and how the people are actually buying it in the long run. Okay, I think it's a good point of taking questions or comments at this point again. So word is yours if there's something you want to ask.
Yes, I have a question. Are you going to go
Yep.
to go through the SDGs or not? Because if you do, I will ask later on. But if you don't, I can ask now.
I might, but you please ask. So
okay, okay. When I attend, workshops or seminar with other impact entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. We are discussing a lot about the SDGs and how we need to include them at the core of our business model. Fin Partnership ran last year a series of workshops around that, and I was wondering, is there a real understanding among entrepreneurs, since you are part also of this association for entrepreneurs? Yeah. Is there a real awareness around the SDGs and how they should be at the core of new business models in Finland?
I would say yes and no. So it really depends on the company, that how they see. So I think if you a little bit jumping into this model is that typical companies, thinking about this core here. So they're thinking about how they fund their business and what they produce. So then let's say the SDGs, they come either as a kind of a core in their model, how they really manufacture things, or then they are not taking them account at all. and in the, let's say, in the between of those is that there are companies that are thinking about them and implementing them in the various ways. But I wouldn't say that, multiple, most of the companies are not really thinking about them, unfortunately. So.
Okay, maybe it will change. Thank you.
Yeah.
You.
So I'm quite honest in my presentations. I try to think about that, the obstacles, how people are behaving, and what you need to accomplish if you want to do a successful business, and you think about how you build up your sustainability and impact company. So it's a hard word out there. Other questions?
I have one question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So from my experience, you were talking a lot about consultancy and consulting and this model of strategic action. And from my short experience in the field, very short, sometimes I see that the companies, they hire consultants not for doing projects, but to advertise sustainability, to use as a way to say we are sustainable, and only with this instrumental purpose of not greenwashing, but yeah, greenwashing.
Yeah, well, I would call
Yes,
it greenwashing.
yes, greenwashing. So I would like to ask you how, as a consultant, you could get to this strategic point without being this marketing hero. How do you see this is possible? How and to which?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. So it's I would say that this is not only building the the greenwashing image. So I know that there's lots of companies that are really kind of just buying it for kind of creating the great images, and that's a thing that they really move in these two domains. So process sustainability and technical sustainability. They're not really thinking about strategic sustainability in that sense. So what is quite important is to get also the top level approval of what you're kind of marketing there, so that you're not just creating an independent action which is not related to the core business of that company or that customer. And I know that that's really difficult position to do and a difficult thing to do, since it doesn't necessarily happen only that you go to the CEO of the company and say that we want to change things, and then he agrees. It's also that it has to go to the other C-level managers, so the marketing manager and the operation manager have to be agreeing that okay, this is the way we should be doing, and then it has to go to the product level in a way that if you have a company that's doing a product, that their product creation is also aligned with the messages that they create. So as an outsider consultant, there's not easy way of doing it, and that's why I think quite many consultants are happily selling just that kind of a greenwashing type of activities, since they are quite difficult to get into the core. So I think one way of getting there is that when you think about your company or your activities you want to sell to any customer, is it the consumer customer or company or business to business customer, you also need to think about that, what you are actually selling to them. What is your core message? How do you want to change their business? How do you want to kind of incorporate sustainability into their business? So you need to kind of formulate your own hero marketing, and then think about the customer's sustainability pyramid and strategy, where you can really create the value, and how you steer them away of just tinkering with the easy things, but really going into this painful decisions how to create your business sustainable. It's I think if you think about to be a successful consultant, you have to think about you have a finger and the customer has a belly, and when you are talking to them, you imagine also kind of pushing their belly with you and creating them a pain, because that's how a good consultant does. So good consultants meeting from my perspective is that the customer is a little bit angry after the meeting. So then you have done something that is impacting them. If everybody is smiling, then probably nothing happened. Or then you're a very good consultant. I don't know if this answered your question, but
Yeah, that's a very good answer. That's quite the opposite of what I've learned in previous work experiences. It was more about make the customer happy at all costs.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. This was great answer. Very clarifying. Thank you.
It's true, because also, like, if you are truly engaged in a sustainable company, like, you want to disrupt something.
Yep.
So there is a discomfort. It's very true. Yeah, interesting.
Okay, so maybe I continue again. So if you have something that you want to ask in the middle of my talk, we have the chat channel. It's open, so just raise your virtual hand in there and say that you have a question, so I can interrupt. Okay, so this is also not a framework. This is not something that I think you could apply immediately in the business model thinking, but it sets a ground of thinking that I think many companies and individuals should think about. So now we are actually during this Corona crisis that we are in middle of. So we are now in the business wise, we are crumbling in this domain. We are crumbling heavily with the manufactured capital, financial capital. Companies are not getting paid, and the companies that can have a financial capital to buy things, for example, they can't get any manufactured goods from China, out of China, because of the crisis. So this part is really crumbling at the moment. Also, it affects that the human capital is, well, people are getting sick, so it's crumbling as well, and in that way, social capital is crumbling. So we are actually in the situation that this sustainability is leading. That only difference is that in sustainability, this part is also kind of a crumbling because of the global warming, and it's affecting everything in here. So doing a sustainability, you have to think about all the aspects in here. So when you're doing your business, your core business, you're manufacturing something, is it a consultancy, intellectual things, or is it really like tangible goods like solar panels or solar warming? Then you have to think about how you behave as a human entity or virtual with your humans, your employees, your customers, and how you're behaving as a social kind of entity in the capital, and how it affects your environment. So this is a quite broad, probably quite difficult to think in your everyday, given that the changes are very difficult to notice. But I try to highlight this a little bit more in detail and with the examples. So first of all, when thinking about the ecological and nature perspective, is to understand the things that you put in the conversation and into the nature is actually the value what you gain from them is exceeding them quite many times of the money you spend. So this is a quite old figure from 2002, but still I think it's valid today. So it's stated that these conversation costs are the ones that you put to protecting the environment directly, like protecting forest, giving money to the WWF and so on, and create that's directly what you put into the nature to conversation of things. Also, like it includes things that you have to prevent things of people using like pesticides in the farming and so. Then there are things subsidies which some people call actually perverse subsidies. So these are actually things that you put into the nature through like supporting farmers, supporting things, and it's actually money that it's already spent into the kind of protecting nature. So, for example, it's a money gift to the farmers that they don't cut down trees or make new plants or something like that. So it's something spent and learned, and then the value is what you gain from that if you protect the nature. Okay, getting even very tangible example is beekeeping and beekeeping's combination to pollination, so kind of pollinate the plants. So even in Finland, the value of pollination from beekeeping is 10 times or 11 times more than what is getting from the honey production. So when you buy honey from off the shelf, you have already the money from that to the production of the GDP of Finland is only one 12th point of what the bee is giving to you on terms of the raise of the production of any crops that are depending on the pollination. And if you think about then in a global scale, the wild bees, which are the bumblebees and other things, their net worth is, this was 2015 or 16 figure, that their value per hectare is something like $3,000 US. And the honeybees, which are the tended bees in these boxes, their value is almost the same. But without these, I think it affects something like 10% of the whole worth of farming globally, directly related to pollination of the bees and honeybees. And I don't even try to imagine what happens if there's no pollination, how much that would affect. But the increase of the crops from actually termed of honeybees in next to the farming is about 10% increase of the productivity. So you can imagine. So this is a example how if you protect like the nature by not using pesticides in a certain way, then you actually gain more out of your farming. So a very good example is that now EU is trying to reduce the use of pesticides in crops of like oil plants, and the farmers are protesting heavily against that, saying that they will lose money. But in the end, actually, their picture is a zero-sum game. So they claim that they will reduce something like crops from 10 to 20%, but actually the bees are giving them 10% more of crops. So they are losing. And then the ones that are directly affected are only like 1/10 or 120% of the whole farming population. And the other farmers like apple farmers, orange farmers and stuff, they are getting more out of it. So getting the pesticides banned is actually good for the nature and it's good for the farming business in total. So how to get these things actually to know and push through with the business, somebody who's creating a business, would it be coming from the honey production side or somewhere else? Would kind of there would be a good money out of it, I think, if somebody just gets this picture through. Just as an example where you can create money value through nature. Okay. No questions raised this far, so I'm just going to a little bit more towards the business models actually. So triple bottom line, I think that should be familiar in some extent. So this is the way how some companies are already expressing their kind of profit statements. So adding things that are more than just greenwashing. So saying that, okay, every company has to prefer kind of a economical, and they have to give every year their profit statements, their cash statements and tax statements. So they have to report this every year anyway. So some companies and are also starting to kind of report their environmental performance and then social performance. Well, the social performance is coming quite important because that's also the company kind of reports. So how you have to give your standardized statements that you're not using child labors. You have to perform kind of sociable, acceptable ways, and there's already legislation guiding people to do before behave here. And here is lots of consultancy already. For example, my company, we are in the software business, but doing business, for example, large telecom operators or large electric companies, we have to report every year that we are behaving good as a good company citizens globally. So we don't take bribes, we don't use unregistered labor or anything like that. So it becomes as a standard procedure in the world already. So actually companies are already acting quite much in this domain. So when they are giving their profit statements, they also have to keep in their kind of company. I lost the word. Company productivity or company good behavior statements, and more also the environmental things. So there's less this kind of reporting that how you report that your profits are made in a ecological way. Some companies are obviously doing it again, but I think in the future we are moving this crossing that we have to actually give a statement that says that we are behaving socially acceptable way and also environmentally acceptable way, and it becomes as a kind of a basic reporting of things. So when it's asked earlier about how you kind of as a consultant or as a business sell things to the larger companies that it's not greenwashing, is that you're thinking about how they report things, what they are reporting things, how they make their money, what is the product they make out of their money, is the product that they make out of the money somehow ecological and also acceptable way, and can you kind of raise the value of this? So look where your companies are making the money and how they do it. Example of a business model that is actually reported or is actually following this triple bottom line is Tesla. Everybody knows Tesla, I guess. And how they actually do it. So their profit, well, it's linked with the electric vehicle market growth. So they are clearly, doing their business that, when people are buying more electric vehicles, they will be market leaders or at least, examples and, growing as the market grows. So that's pure business. And then the people side, there, one of the claims is that, they want to make electric cars something more than, the old transport vehicles that are very ugly and ugly colors and nobody wanted them. Like the 3 wheels vehicles from Mr. Bean, the small ones. That was the image of electrical vehicle like 20 years ago. Now the electrical vehicle is like the best sport car there is. But also in the society, yes, they're very much on safety and services side. Well, safety we can kind of take apart, but if you think about services, that they are also building this chain of services, and to create electric cars, as an industry and as vehicle transformation form, you really have to build the service chain. Without that, nothing happens. And then they take this quite serious. And then you think about the planet. So I wouldn't say that when they're creating the electric vehicle, they would be immediately saying that we are doing ecological things. But if you look beyond beyond, what is happening with the Tesla is that they are not only building the vehicles for people to drive, but they're kind of also building the robot vehicles, self-driving cars. They are building solar panels to the roof, roof tiles that are actually solar panels themselves. And might be wondering why they're doing these kind of things, but it's also that they see that the whole product life cycle of a vehicle, electric vehicle, needs to be more than just a vehicle. For example, the batteries in the electric car, they will last something like some years, like let's say 5 years. I don't know exactly because I'm not a battery expert, but after a certain period of the battery, it's still usable as an energy storage, but it doesn't anymore give the energy out fast enough that it could serve as a car battery. So it's kind of a performance goes down over time, but its capacity to store energy is still there, but it just gives the energy slower. Okay, then it could have still like 10 years life as an energy storage for a house. So if I buy solar panels on my house today, there's not the battery energy is too expensive that it creates impact. But when the electric vehicle market grows, there will be an extents of used batteries that can be used as a kind of energy storages at home. So then there's actually a effect that creates it as a more like more really planet or ecological, sustainable business. So I like Tesla, not the cars, but I like their thinking about farther than or further than just the immediate action of creating an electric vehicle market, but use the market to create like smart energy or smart cities or this kind of smart grids that are needed in the future to create the energy needs that we still have without fossil fuels. Okay, any questions at this point? Should I go on with the product definitions? Okay, so there's one typing. I'll wait for a while that the questions or comments. I know it's a bit tiresome to just listen with your headphones on, but unfortunately, this is the time. Okay, no chat messages yet, so I continue. If it comes in the meanwhile, I'll give answers and comments. So I was talking about the Tesla cars, and I understand that there might be people that don't feel the way I feel about Tesla, and there might be, and there's things that are not really like sustainable with Tesla. Even like I was 2 years ago or something when they didn't perform quite well and their stock price was plumbing, and they decided to reduce the value of their new cars, and lots of Tesla car owners were actually having cars that were more expensive used than they were getting if there were a new car coming out of the factory, Tesla factory. So obviously there were quite many people that were really angry. So you could claim that it's not very socially acceptable way or a good way to society to just reduce your car prices. So that leads me to this slide about ethical consumption. So when you think about ethical consumption or conscious consumption, it's not just the ecological impact or the social impact. It's every way it's around your personal values. So those are still things that are leading the decision, even if it's just a pint of beer. So there's your personal values. Do you want dark beer, light beer, IPA, whatever kind of a flavor you want. But then you think about, how much you're willing to pay for it. Does it have a good brand in your view? That I never drink, for example, I'm from, if you're from Germany, you probably prefer German brands rather than Polish beer, and that's natural. And then, after that, you think about the social impacts, ecological impacts, and then since still you are here as a personal value, you might see the ecological and social impacts differently than other people. And because, it's quite difficult to see where everything comes from. You might think that, for example, the car again, good example is that if you calculate the whole life cycle of a car, then Tesla, car is, it's less ecological as a car than like Land Rovers, the now extinct Defender model. And the reason was that, it takes something like 10 years of a Tesla to become the ecological footprint to become as ecological as is something that is Defender that is manufactured for like 40 years or 50 years with the same factory, and the materials are like 10 times or 100 times more complex in Tesla than in Land Rover Defender. And even if the Land Rover is using fuel like a thirsty madman, it still uses its ecological footprint still less than a Tesla within 10 years. After that, Tesla becomes more ecological. So this is something that things that some people see that more kind of in their personal view that okay, I will use my diesel car because it's already paid and it's already there, so it doesn't create more footprint than just the fuel usage. So that's why they oppose electric cars, for example. So you have to be aware, that again, what I talk about in the beginning, it becomes when you present your marketing, you present your view that this is a most ecological beer that there is. Then there are all these dimensions. People say that it's not because of this, and you can't claim this because I think it's not that. And then come all these experts that are really experts in everything and say that blah blah blah. This is not ecological because I feel it's not ecological. And this is something that you can't overcome. And you have to create your brand value, your price value, and other ecological impacts at the same time to affect to these peoples. Example again, going really in the business models, is that there's lots of ecological tour agencies already and ecological destinations, and it's well accepted. So this is about 10, 12-year-old study. I haven't checked these figures how they are today, but I claim that they are not changed too much. So if you think about people buying trips, so in the studies they say that it's almost 100%. There's always the 10% that are against everything and very selfish people that don't care whatever they're doing. But still, like majority of people traveling are concerned about the environment when asked. And I guess this 25%, which I hear, was say that they are influenced and they're already looking into it. It might be actually higher today, so that the people are even, more looking into the green possibilities or ecological possibilities when they're traveling. And for example, I always try to find the company or the companies that are local, so that are hired by local people, owned by local people, and that also produce the money into the society around it, because that's one way of creating a kind of a green traveling or environmental traveling, because then there will be more money in that society to look into the environmental things as well, since the money stays in the company, and money is an race of the well-being in the society is the one way of affecting the nature directly. But still, since people are very favorable of that, and people are already inflected by that, still in today, less than 10% of these activities turn into purchasing decisions. So still people go to Canary Islands with the back traveling, or go with the Ryanair for cheap travels, for weekend and so on. So it's a question that there might be motives, there might be offering, but something prevents this into turning the purchasing decision. And I guess in the traveling, it's very much, quite much of the price value that goes in the decision. So this also needs changing. And I guess nowadays we are talking about things that might actually change the whole traveling if what happens with the aftermath of Corona. So, but it's too early to predict what happens. But
I have a question.
Yeah.
So would it, if we consider that money and the price has the last word, when we make a purchase decision, if after this coronavirus crisis, maybe we will be able to define a new model for a non-toxic society, right? So would it be so that if we defined collectively that the value is not related to money that much anymore, then it could affect, the consumption habits. But I can't really see. And after, also, I was thinking while watching your slide with the ethical consumption, we can add, as we did, tons of sustainable products, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still the same model for the society.
Yep.
So do you think that I find it as an entrepreneur very complex, because as an entrepreneur we are action people. Entrepreneurship is all about action. Then making profit is a consequence of that, but this is something all entrepreneurs love. Mm-hmm. They love changing things, creating things, and all this. But then I have faced, for example, the critique that this club was rooted at Y-Kampus, and sharing a lot about entrepreneurship, aka business, aka money, and all this is part of the problem. So my question is would, for example, the fair trade, certification and companies, they are having maybe a very interesting approach, very holistic, where ethics and the product and the local fabrication, the whole circle, is the whole life cycle of a product is addressed. But when it comes to services like tourism, and adding more and more product, unless the whole society changes with the government, with everything, I can't really see how things can continue to be ethical in a non-ethical system. You see what I mean?
Yeah. But I've been giving a quite I would say harsh and realistic picture, but as a background, and when you think about the business model. But luckily I have a good news as well. So this is the thing I think answers your questions, is that there's I don't know if you are familiar with this long tail model, but the long tail model was introduced sometimes early 2000. I can't remember exact dates, but it was about digital distribution. So that how things that when you create music and an album or hit song, in early days, it was here about the supply chains. So when you created an album, you printed it on a LP, later in a CD, and then you sold it. And when you sold it, then you made the money. And then after that, you you tour, make it gigs and tours and then radio plays and stuff. But in the digital society, when Spotify's and other things are coming and are already here, the consumption actually takes a longer time. So then you have a lots of options, and you actually use a small amount of them, over the year. So in the long tail, it was time, not the product options, but the distribution was the same. So if you think about in the consumption, which comes the ecological consumption and becomes a sustainable behavior, is actually that we are in the society that the ecological things are quite much in here. But this is, I think, it's a good thing, because when you're doing small things, then you're doing local things, and you kind of impact by having a wide selection and a local. So actually you in the society less get these global things that are just by transport by supply chain, but you can actually endorse things like local farmers, local shopping, local travel, local things. And I think this is something that will grow now after, among the coronavirus things, because hopefully people are, more aware of what's happening around them, and to be more kind of taking care of their immediate surroundings, immediate people, and then by supporting local community, you actually support the environment. So you can make this impact. And lots of impact companies are actually working in this domain and growing towards that. So some of these most likely grow into the big ones, but not all of them. It's like in a business, even especially in the venture capital business or this kind of a startup business, it's only like 1/10 of the companies that make it a big hit, or even less. But quite many of them are staying there in a quite low productivity and low growth, but they're still making impact. So it's not a bad place to be. It's actually, in terms of making an impact, this is a good place to be. If you think about the distribution on a large scale, then we are talking about this, like you mentioned about fair trade and things. Then you have to be really transparent in your supply chain. You have to make a report. You have to understand the whole logic how you make the money. So, and fair trade is doing that. They are showing that, giving a face to the farmers, saying that they give more money out to the farmers, and the things that you buy with a fair trade brand, you can be assured that in some extent they are good for nature, good for the people. Also, but that even in the fair trade, there are criticism. For example, during the last economical crisis, I don't know if you remember 2008, the financial crisis, when the stock market plummeted and the Iceland collapsed and whatever happened. There was a situation in Chile with the wine producers, and especially the fair trade wine producers, that there were like 5 brands, if I remember correctly, that were producing fair trade brand wines in Chile. So they actually lost something like 60% of their grape farmers and grape suppliers, because the price of the grape kind of raise in the free market. So, and the fair trade were kind of, it was nicely built in a way that they have always the minimum price that they pay of the grape, but they were also placed that they couldn't actually raise the price to be market. So they couldn't fluctuate their price based on how the market behaved. So they were kind of stuck in their own model of being a fair and giving a kind of the fixed money to the farmers. So by the fair trade rules, they couldn't pay more to the farmers, and then farmers sold their crops, even if they were produced in fair trade principles, to the free market, and the fair trade wine lost. So this was an example of that. You have to think about that. Your like impact business model also have to be able to fluctuate if the business fluctuates around you. So even if the bad kind of evil business fluctuates, your good business have to be react to that. But I think being here is not a bad thing. Okay, so any comments on that? I go deeper to the business models all the time. So, but if you want to talk about this larger picture, just raise your hand.
Sorry, but what do you mean by like larger picture?
Yeah, I just I'm talking about quite much I think economics rather than business in here. If you think about freight rate and stuff.
Okay, but still quite interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, I jump more into the towards closer to the business. So I was talking about the hammer and nail thing, but there's another thing you might heard about the drill. There's a famous saying that people don't buy 7-inch drill, they buy 7-inch hole. Oh, sorry, 7mm drill. They buy 7mm hole. So when you're selling a power drill, you're actually selling holes rather than the drill itself. So and that then comes to this, which comes from Christensen's book, is actually that the job is the fundamental analysis when you think about your product. So it's what the job your product should do or your service should do. And I think this is important in various topics. Also, when you think about sustainability, is that what you are actually selling, what job you are selling to as a product. An example here is milkshakes, and the example is from West Coast America, where the fast food chains were starting to kind of making market studies of what kind of milkshakes people want to have, and they noticed that people were buying them quite much in the morning and less in the afternoon, and they tried to kind of understand the thing why they were doing that. So they were asking that what kind of flavors and what they expect from their milkshakes, and they got the typical answers that flavor is everything. We want good tasting milkshakes. We want sweet milkshakes for the kids, and so on and so on. And the company did kind of what they did from that market study, and there weren't any effect to the sales. So the sales was same, more in the morning, less in the afternoon, and they started to wonder why. And then another study started to actually look how people were actually using those milkshakes, what they were doing with the milkshakes in the morning. So the learning was actually that the people that were buying the milkshakes in the morning were adults that were commuting to work with the car. They were driving to the office with the car, and so they wanted something to keep them kind of entertained during this boring commuting, like half an hour drive or an hour drive to the office. So they knew that they had a breakfast before they took their kids to the school or kindergarten, and then they have lunch something like 12 o'clock, and so they need also something that keep them less hungry until the lunchtime. So milkshake was quite good for that. And in the morning when they want the milkshake, they want the milkshake actually that doesn't run out quickly. So they want thick milkshake, something that is clumsy and takes time to suck, so that they keep entertained. And while in the afternoon, they come, after they pick their kids from the school or kindergarten, they go to have a quick meal or afternoon dinner, but they don't want to spend time in the fast food chain, long time. So they don't buy milkshakes to their kids because it takes a long time to drink the milkshake, and they don't want that the kids take the milkshake to the car, because then in the back seat is ruined and everything is very messy. So in the afternoon they actually want milkshakes that would be easy to drink, very quick to drink. So opposite of the morning. So the fast food chain actually changed this behavior. So in the morning, they served this kind of a breakfast style milkshakes that had even like clumps of fruits in it. So really like a healthy breakfast style. And in the afternoon, they start more like smooth, more watery type of milkshakes that had lots of sugar and flavor, and the kids like it. So, and Ulla, their sale of the milkshakes started, growing in the both ends. So they started to sell more milkshakes in the morning and more milkshakes in the afternoon. Or actually, the afternoon milkshakes growth from almost 0 to good figures. So that was really that it wasn't about the product itself. It was what the product was used for. But that's a kind of I think the important taking if you want to take out it. Here is a couple of I would say both are ecological innovations. The left side, say paper, is quite obvious. Just make a nice visualization. Then you can really create your message saying that, okay, if you use lots of paper, rainforests are gone. Quite simple message. I don't know if you know about this right-hand side, the fly on the toilet bowl. If you're male, you might understand it. As a female, I think it's quite difficult to understand. But this was actually from Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, and it's now around in the airports and in public toilets. So the innovation was that there's lots of spillage when the males are in the toilet. I don't know why. So there's this kind of tryouts to be like educational, so that don't spill when you are pissing. Don't make a mess. Try to be clean. Doesn't help. Then there are these funny claims like take a step further. It's shorter than you think. These kind of claims, and they don't even help. But then planting this little fly in the toilet bowl suddenly helped, and after introducing this, the spillage in the Schiphol airport was down by something like 70 to 80%. So it means that there's less cleaning. And the innovation was that men, when they're pissing, they want something to aim at, and they give it a fly, and people started to aim better. And it was a quite nice kind of a innovation. And so both of them are also kind of, they're looking for the job you are doing and innovation that actually solves your problem while still educate you with things and impact your behavior. So now we are going to the beef of a business models. So I don't know if you have introduced, if you're in a business studies, you probably have heard about this. So business model canvas. And I think this is a very good way of kind of pinpointing everything that I've talked earlier. So you have to think about the job that your product is doing. You have to think about the society you're behaving. You have to think about how people think. And then you start pinning them into this canvas. And this is a way of getting kind of your business model into real work. So if you're doing like this, you have to think about how it affects the whole chain, and then where the revenue and cost are coming out. Yeah, that's a good way of target men. Okay, so here's an example of a business model canvas of a Mobile Monday. I don't know even if it does even exist anymore, but it was a quite big thing in about 10 years ago. And a Mobile Monday about every month events where people met, and there were people giving a speech, and some companies sponsored the speech, and then they made business together and hopefully a success. Good examples of businesses that were, I don't know, not introduced, but were grown through Mobile Monday in Finland was, for example, Rovio and Angry Birds. So Rovio was very active in those and gained lots of good people in their network, and finally managed to create the final hit, which was the Angry Birds. And before that, they were, almost bankrupt, but they managed to do their hit. But the Momo, this was Creative Commons, so it's a good example of how to use the business model campus. So what you think about here, you think about the partners. So partners is the one that you use to create your value. So it says it could be your not your customers, but the things that are affected. So it's basically in sustainability society as well. Then you have your activities you define here. So what is the thing? So it's in Mobile Mondays event organization. The partners are obviously the one that are kind of giving a good speech about them. The key resources is how you do things, organizing teams, what you're using. There's nicely social capital here, and then the brand. And then your value proposition, actually, what is your job? What is your product job? What the job the product is actually accomplishing? And after that, there's like the mundane things like how you build your customer relationship, what are the channels you build your company, and then finally, who's your customer? How your customer is actually reflecting to your things, how they're buying. So I think in the sustainability, you think about the partners and the customers are quite much interlinked, because you have to think about the big picture, the society, the environment. And then, how do you produce things? What's the revenues? So if you manage to build kind of a solid business model out in here, then, you have a, good ways of succeeding it. But, creating this kind of a very simple looking picture like Mobile Monday has created, I know that this is not very easy. So it takes time. It takes iteration. It takes alternative business model thinking to get into this clear picture of your business model. But this is a very good tool of creating your and analyzing what is your business model. Then if you go really even more simple tools before you go to the business model campus, I still recommend using SWOT analysis. So strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Because I think this is the best thing here is that it forces you to think about what is your business model strengths, what are the things that you can really, produce, what are your core competencies, what can you do, how you can kind of affect things. Then weaknesses is the thing that, okay, what are the losses you don't have, what you can't do. For example, if you your strength is that you are good creating a mobile application for sustainability, but your weakness is that you don't have a programmers in your company or in your vicinity, your availability, feasibility, or getting into your business, supporting you. Then that's your weakness. Opportunity is obviously your business opportunities, but then the threats is also that it forces you to think about the competition. The one that what are the risks that you can't succeed. So threats are the your company doesn't succeed, but then risk might be that somebody else comes with the same idea and quicker than you. So this is a good exercise to do as well. Then if you think about your kind of a way of creating the alternatives, and I think the disruption is something that is evident that is coming now. And disruptive innovations is something that has been explored quite much, because especially in the technological domain. So the model here is basically that you have the trajectory of your business. So business is by nature is kind of growing all the time. But then there's always the limit of growth. So this is the level of growth that without any kind of marketing effort or raising the society or something, that it can't be kind of exceeded easily. So this is the kind of the performance level. So with the good marketing and sustaining your strategy, you might grow business here. For example, let's say Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola, they are really in here. They are just growing the kind of a business by marketing, introducing new flavors, and sustaining their strategy. And they perform better than most of the soda manufacturers in the world. But then disruption might be something that, you create similar product with the lower cost. So you manage to do something which is almost as good as these sustaining strategy companies, but it's much cheaper. It's easy to buy, or otherwise it kind of disrupts the main company strategy. So usually price is the thing that you can produce something else. This slide was from a study about traditional energy. So sustaining strategy is obviously that you have the energy coming from a grid produced by different electricity companies, and then their kind of selling is that they try to compete with the price quite much, and that's why people are now calling from the electricity sales company, because they try to sell it a little bit cheaper to you, and they can produce it a little bit more efficiently and so on. But then the disruption here is that actually you create alternative energy solutions, for example, solar panels into your roof. So you can actually produce some of your energy yourself. So it's also kind of a low-end disruption, because you can, with a certain amount of investment, you can get a certain amount of energy created on your own without paying to anybody outside. So it takes currently, I think, the 10 to 12 years that if you buy in a single family home in Finland, solar panels, and after that your energy is kind of free. Before that, it's the investment cost that case of, but it goes like here. But then it's another dimension, which is this non-consumption. So it's kind of interesting that here is something that is already existing in path, but here's something identified new market that is not served well at all. So then you can actually create your own paths and your own growth. So it's kind of you identify that probably similar way of here companies doing business. You can actually create a complete new business because there's no consumption.